how we first met. We were trying to, well, at least I didn't actually know how we first met, but in conversation with Andrea yesterday, he reminded me that it was actually in Singapore, and we went, among other places, to the East Coast Park for a walk, and with Alvin Park here, who is kind of signaling me and could have actually prompted me about it. The remarkable thing then, I think we're all very interested in what he had, what he was doing, what he wanted to do then, and in fact by now has actually done already. Back then he was interested in setting up a publishing house in Italy to specialize in publishing fiction from contemporary Asia in Italian translation. And the sort of work that he was looking for was not Italian, was not Asian exotica, not the kind of stuff that sometimes gets published in the US, about people in costumes and exactly. He wanted, he had a vision of contemporary Asian fiction about the way that we actually live our lives in Asia today. Right? How contemporary Asians are coping with development, coping with urban issues, societal issues, and to kind of, I suppose the way to put it is that a measure of his engagement with the subject matter is that he's now actually spending most of his time in Asia. He just spent, I think, about half a year in China. Living with, speaking with, talking with the writers, and actually getting to understand firsthand what they are actually going through. Some of the books that he's since published are actually quite remarkable. We've got people of the cast of Han in China, and hopefully, coming out of this, we might have someone also coming out of Singapore. Sorry, I'm talking a lot actually, but Andre, just feel free to barge in because otherwise I'm just going to go on. But maybe just to complete the introduction a little bit, I think there are other interesting aspects to Andrea. He's also the president of a microfinance institution that funds fair trade producers and cooperatives in Latin America, Asia, and Africa. He's also a writer, obviously, which is one of our reasons we're here. Having published 4 books since the 1980s. And I'm just going to very briefly mention that Andrea first mentioned this book to me. I think it was in Vietnam, actually, but it could have been in Singapore as well. A couple of years ago, he told me the story about Italian skilled workers from Monte Falcone near Trieste, crossing into Yugoslavia with this vision of building a better life, as a utopian kind of society. And then the sorts of things that happened to them after that, which kind of drove them to a measure of disillusionment, and then to have to flee back into Italy, and then the kind of troubles that they met with after that. So I'm not really going to talk about this too much because I think we've got the subject matter expert here. And maybe what I'll do is I'll ask him to give an account of the book. Andrea.
Yeah. Now, first of all, thanks for inviting me here. It's an honor to be invited in this country. Thanks to Research Books for taking my 2,000 workers from Falcone to Singapore. Such a long road to do. And thanks to Ho Fang for choosing such a good title. My original title was a title taken from a popular song, popular among the working class in those days. And he chose something much more important. This is a quotation from Dickens, Tale of Two Cities. And when he told me, I was thinking it's too much for me, please. I'm not such a great writer. I am a person who is interested in other persons. And a few minutes ago, someone here asked me about what is this book? Is fiction or non-fiction? And I told him it is narrative non-fiction. This is what we used to say in Italy, using the English word. And his question was, what is narrative non-fiction? And my answer was, I think it's non-fiction in which a writer is focused on persons, on people. And this is a story of individual persons who had a collective project. Workers, the working class in Europe since all along the last century has this kind of project, which was a project that they pursued all together. The project by the common workers to be not just slaves, not just exploited, not just at the order of someone, obeying the orders of someone else, but being the owner of their own lives. And this picture that is coming from one of them is the picture of many of them in the shipyard where they were working. You see that this is the rudder of a normal ship that they built together, all together with their hands. And all together with their own hands, they conceived the project, which is not just their project, is a general project for European working class and for European intellectuals, how to build a society for them. And well, it was the end of Second World War. They were working in Monfalcone, which is a town not far from Yugoslavia, which was a communist country. And they decided to migrate to Yugoslavia. The result of this migration was not positive, because over there communism was not what they were hoping. A few of them, some of them were even imprisoned and captured into concentration camps. And many of them decided to go back to Italy after a few months. Some of them decided to go back after a few years. And, well, end of the story, for them, it was, and they tell you that in the book, it was a trauma. One of them told me, you know, it's like a syndrome. You have a project, the project is right, you go there, you realize that there is something which is wrong, and you have not the courage to go on, the heart to go on. You don't know how to give an answer to yourself. What was right, what was wrong? And so you choose silence. And they came back to Italy choosing to be silent. And well, after 50 years, after 55 years, by chance I met the grandson of one of them who told me this story, which was quite unknown in Italy. It is very, very, very unusual to have such an important story to be unknown. And out of them I went to the place and I met again a son of one of them. And he told me, Andrea, I thank you for coming here because I remember something when I was a little child and my father was taken into prison. I was in Yugoslavia. I remember a night, I remember shadows. It was the secret police of Yugoslavia coming in the night to take his father and to imprison him. And he told me, I was sent back to Italy. My father was released after 4 years. And when he came back, I asked him what happened. And the answer was, never ask me that. This was the answer of all of them. They didn't want to talk. There was something in their mind and their heart which was broken. And so, what is this book about? This book is about words. And the words are the words who these old workers, 80, 90 years old, whom I met there, choose to tell me for the first time their story. The son of that man was died already, he was very old. He told me, oh, Andrea, this is the first time, because we went to meet some relatives of him who has the same story. It was the first time they gave me words about what happened.
What made you decide that this was something that you wanted to write into a book? It's a fascinating story.
No, I think that the question is quite clear. Giving an answer is not so easy. I was left-wing, I am left-wing. I was the kind of person which in my youth used to define myself not only Marxist but Leninist, even a Maoist. And in those years we had done so many good things in Italy, end of the 60s, starting of the 70s. And I think we forgot about that. I saw so many friends of mine who decided, when we realized, when I was no more 17 years old, when I became 22, and I realized that Maoism was not good. It's very difficult for everybody to tell yourself, well, anything, something good you have done, although you've done something bad.
Well, that's kind of interesting. How did you realize for yourself that communism was not good in what you were 22, you said?
Well, it was, let's say, it was 74 when I remember a discussion in the usual student assembly, and I was speaking and I was telling my friend, but are we sure of what we are doing, or there is something which is not good? Old words, again, words, and we know that the result of socialism in all Soviet countries were not good. In this book, there is a man who tells me, I've been a member of Communist Party for all over my life, but I remember when they put me on the bus and we went to visit East Germany, and we went there and we saw how bad was the condition of the worker there. We realized that this was not the right project. Communism is not an answer. Totalitarian is never an answer. But as for them, as for the workers, and for me, I think it's right to go on and try to fight or to work, just to work or to act for a better world, for a world where there is justice.
And I mean, it's very striking that a lot of the characters in the book have this conviction about what ideals they are going to follow, what sort of a society they wanted to build. But I was very interested when you said that, and kind of documented that when you came back, when you left the old Yugoslavia and went back to Italy, they kept a very stoic silence about what they've been through, and didn't want to talk about it. They want to kind of admit, as it were, that they were wrong. I found it very kind of challenging even to reconcile with the fact that, which I think you cited somewhere in the book, when they went over, people were talking about looking for consciences. Right? It's almost as though they went looking for consciences, and when they came back, that disappeared.
Well, consciousness did not disappear. I think they went on to be members of trade unions, even members of the Communist Party. They went on with their life, but it was well clear that something was wrong in the project, and again something was right in their intention. You mentioned the word consciousness. There is a section in the book in which one of them used to tell me what is consciousness in their opinion, using an Italian, a dialect word, a word coming from dialect, which is sentimento. We call in the English word sentiment, but it's not like that. And he told me, we had el sentimento, and el sentimento is the wish to build up something which is good for everybody, to be committed to a society which is where you share things with your comrades, with the people you are working with.
I guess the other thing I was quite interested by was, and I don't really have a grip on this, it's just something I kind of peripherally know about, and maybe Andre, you can help explain this to me. I think there is a role that kind of the political geography of the time had to play in the decision of these workers to actually move to Yugoslavia as well, right? Because in the region that I came from, Julia, I understand that it only became part of Italy following the First World War. And actually, if you visit around the area, and I've been to Trieste, for example, which is not quite Julia, but close. Actually, it's possibly the part of Italy that is most un-Italian, actually. So was there an element of not actually feeling part of Italy itself that motivated this migration?
Yes, this element was in the story, as many other elements. In fact, the story was complicated by this environment. First of all, as you say, a bordering region, Friuli, Venezia Giulia. In Friuli they speak Italian, in Venezia Giulia...
Sorry, I'm just going to interrupt very, very quickly to say that the wine that we're having is from Friuli.
Yeah. Salute, cheers from. And Venezia Giulia is a region which in the centuries has been sometimes with the Austro-Hungarian, sometimes with Italy. After First World War, it was conquered by Italians, and not only Venezia Giulia, even part of the actual Slovenia in Croatia, Fiume or Rijeka in Croatia, which is the city where they migrated to the shipyard, was sometimes Italian, sometimes Slovenian. Many different languages were spoken there. So there was also this thing, yes. This was also one among the reasons for their migration there. This was also the reason why they decided to fight fascism Italy from the 20s to World War and during the end of World War. And other things happened around. For instance, they decided to migrate to Yugoslavia, and most of them were members of the Communist Party. And the Communist Party in those days was closely related to Stalin. And Yugoslavia was run by Tito. and Tito Stalin had a big argument. They fought against, and Stalin declared Tito an enemy of the communism. And so for them it was so difficult to be there and even to defend Stalin against the Yugoslavian, being in a far country and defending someone that has told something against Yugoslavia. But my perception is that when you go and talk with them, and remember, these are 2,000 people. When you say 2,000 people, it's 2,000 individuals with their own story. I even have been told by one of them, oh, it was a paradise, you know, women there are so beautiful. I married a woman. I mean, out of 2,000 persons, you have individual stories. But out of individual stories, you can realize there is some common point. And the common point I was interested in was what was moving you toward communism, toward socialism. What were you expecting to find over there? This was my question. Because I think when you ask that question to a person who had such a bad experience, and still they are able to tell you, this was my aspiration. Well, this was the real aspiration. I mean, the real desire. I'm sorry for my English.
So it's much better than my Italian. But was there an element of, perhaps they were actually comfortable to talk about it only now, like 60 odd years after the event. And if you asked them maybe 20 years ago or 30 years ago, they would not.
You mean something now that will...
No, I said, there was enough passage of time, for these people to have...
I was there in the beginning of this new century, let's say. It was 2002, 2003. Yeah. And, 14 years after the Berlin Wall collapsed, nobody in Italy or in European countries was still thinking to communism. I think I was lucky to be there in the right moment in which they were ready to talk. Because really, when Rino Russian accompanied me to visit his uncle, he told me, it's 50 years I'm trying to get an answer, and now I got it. I think time passed by, and time is good for healing your heart around it. And this was the time in which they felt that it was possible to do. Possibly they were at the end of their life, all of them were no more workers, they were 80 years old, 90 years old. It was the right time to tell a story. I was also a foreigner, because I was coming from Milan. I was coming from real Italy, and they all consider themselves, the one who live in the right region. They are different. They are proud to be from Venezia Giulia. They can have an Italian surname, an Italian surname for southern Italy, or a Hungarian surname, or a Slovenian surname. Even recently, during the fascism era, the fascists told them that they needed to change their name. So a Kosulic should become a Kosuli. I mean, the Hungarian, the Austrian name needed to become an Italian name. So they are proud of that. And well, you have this man. I was was around 50 years old, coming from Milan and asking them about this far story. I didn't declare I am left-wing, I am not. I was not a member of any association or any party. I was out of, and I wish to know about them, about the person. Tell me about you. And this was the time to talk. And the word is what healed you from a bounded heart, wounded heart.
Did you find any people who were still unwilling to talk, who turned you away?
Well, yes, of course. I have chosen the one who were open to me, but the one who didn't want to talk were let's say the leaders. Still being the leaders of the Communist Party in the area. I remember when I had my book launch there. Wow, 3,000, 4,000 people in the whole, because the whole of the city was there. And in front of me, I have a few leaders. And they were frowning and looking at me with fierce. They were against me because they were thinking, who is that man? That man is coming here and is telling us that we were wrong. And when I told them, when I started speaking and told them, I am interested in this story because I know there is something right in the working class values. And I started talking and talking, I remember that they started to smile. and I was happy with that. And there was just one thing that they told me, and they told me you were wrong in your book, because in the book I remember, well, let's say I give a picture of a scene which was told to me of the factory in Italy, the gate of the big shipyards, a long road going to the shipyard, and all the workers walking to the gate or going by bicycle, and the owner of it passing by with horses and what is that? A carriage. And I told you should think to these people that every morning have to take their hat down in front of the owner. And one of these leaders told me, you were wrong in that, but because we, Monfalcone worker, we never pull out our hat to the owner. And
did you actually visit the shipyards, either the one in Monfalcone or the one in Fiume?
I visited the one in Monfalcone and part of the one in Fiume. Yes, it's now a modern shipyard. They are building up now the big Costa cruise ships that became famous because of a small accident in Italy recently. Well, no more 18,000 workers, of course. 1,500 is enough to do that. I visited the shipyard in Fiume, and it was not in such a good condition, but 2002, well, it was a moment in which Yugoslavia have disappeared, been fragmented in so many different countries, and the condition was not so good. But well, shipyard is an astonishing place. It's a place of enormous things, enormous instruments, enormous buildings, and enormous ships, and you are I am the kind of person who never used his hands for work apart from writing and typing. I mean, I'm not a manual worker, and when you realize what does it mean to work in such a place, how the danger that you can have every day from these big things.
I mean, interestingly enough, Singapore is actually a huge shipbuilding hub as well. You know, some of our shipyards are completely world class. The kind of output that they put out, in terms of cat-up rigs and certain those. We are really world class leading, shipyards in that sense. I'm kind of going to use that as an excuse to kind of bring it back to Singapore and ask. While it's been a fascinating story, what made you, want to publish this in Singapore?
I would like to publish it all over in the world, first of all. But I was lucky in Singapore because possibly you remember, or if I remember, I was at a dinner 4 years ago after a writers' festival and so on. And I've been telling about it. I'm a writer. I wrote a book and I told a story. And I remember there was a man having dinner with us, and I realized how he was moved by the story I was telling him. And this man was von Hofmann, who told me, I want to publish your book, because this is a story that has universal values, even in far Singapore. And thank you for doing that.
The restaurant is nearby, it was charcoal. The one over there. I remember reading the first page in the original academics page.
Actually, Hofan, I'm going to put you on the spot right now. What made you decide to do it?
Wow, you're really putting me on the spot. But when Andrea told me the story, I was really very moved by it because I personally, on a personal front, I am aware of many friends and relatives who have been affected in a way after the war. In a sort of similar way, there are some parallels actually in the experiences of the people I knew with what Andrea was telling me about. And then I began to realize that this is actually a very universal thing. This desire to want to create a better society, it doesn't just belong to the West, It also comes in small places like Singapore or Malaysia. Yeah? The people want to build, the workers want to have justice, they want to build a community where there is sharing among everyone. And of course, along the way, because of different reasons and so on, some of them are defeated, some of them are disillusioned, some maintain those ideals even though they are defeated, some just decide to keep quiet, and maybe for 50 years. Actually, there is if I may plug another book, there is another book launch that's going to happen tomorrow on Saturday by a group of people in millions in the 1960s who wanted to build a better society as well, and who were also crushed and disillusioned by different circumstances, by the authorities, And these people are now beginning, 50 years after, are beginning to speak up again. And it is a parallel actually to what Andrea is doing. I think the editors of that particular book are doing the same thing what Andrea did 10 years ago, to go out and look for unspoken stories and journeys. And this is the thing that actually, as a publisher, that was the reason why I went into publishing, to actually offer a platform for universal stories to be told, to inspire Whether you're defeated or not is another story, you know. But to inspire people that there is something in human beings that should bring us above just money. Yeah.
Thank you, Wolfgang, and for everyone in the audience, just to keep you on your toes, I might call on you next. Anyway, but one thing I was struck by is that, that you're drawing the parallels, I think quite rightly, with societies in Asia where people are actually all coming together with conviction to improve their own societies, improve the way of life for people in Asia. And I just want to kind of turn back to you, Andrea, and ask, given that you spend so much time in Asia, past 6 months in China, you spend time in India, you spend time in Malaysia, if I'm not wrong? Malaysia, even in Singapore, of course.
In Jakarta, in Taiwan.
What do you kind of make of that? I mean, how do you experience Asian societies trying to better themselves? Do they do it in quite the same way as European societies used to do back in the last century? Are there kind of different priorities? What's your take?
Well, it's a good question. And I'm writing a new book. and the new book, which is focused on what I have done in Asia the last few years, 5, 6 years, meeting writers, publishers, and graphic novelists, and journalists, and filmmakers. And I realized that when I tell these stories, I'm also telling the story of these let's say new countries, countries transforming themselves. And it's a question I give myself, it's a question I give you. What is the future? What will be the future? I'm in China. China is the country which is manufacturing all what we buy in Europe now. There are big concentration of workers there. And it is told, it is known that there are even revolts by workers in China. There are people sending news with the local Twitter and so on. Of course, there is a censorship of that. And the same I know in India. In India, there is a form of resistance, not by workers but by peasants who are usually dispossessed of their land because someone wants to build a new city, a new magnificent tower and environment and so on. And what I realize is that the existence of this working class is now forgotten a little bit. I think the people who inhabit these big cities, Shanghai, Beijing, Delhi, KL, Jakarta, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Taipei, Hong Kong, they're middle class people. Writers are usually coming from the middle class. Readers are coming from the middle class because they can read. And they discuss issues which are related to this kind of life. In China, out of 1 billion, 300 million people, more than 500,000 are urbanized, so are becoming middle class. And what I realize is that they tend to discuss about their own issue. They are not able to have a look outside. Well, of course, you come out from poverty. I meet important writers and intellectuals in China, and they tell me, my family was so poor we used to eat meat once a year. I was able to come out because I had good votes in the school and the university and so on. And I don't know if they will be able to reconnect themselves with that hidden part of the society. If they don't do that, if intellectuals in these countries don't do that, I think there is a fear to lose something, at least to lose the perspective, the real perception of what your life is. You are here, but there is someone building up things for you. You should remember that this is a closed environment, and outside there is something else. I would also say, if you forget that there is something else, your life would be maybe a little bit boring. And these are the words that there is a well-known English science fiction writer, J.G. Ballard, who used to tell that when he was questioned, what is your fear about the future? And the answer was, I fear that the world in the future will be, well, it's difficult to translate. I know it from Italian, so I can't say it in English. It's a suburb. My fear is that the world will be a big suburb for our soul. Suburban area of the soul.
Or you should just say it and Melvin will translate.
Yeah, I just said.
That is actually, I'm going to flip that question around because I think you are one of you're one of the very interesting people in how you've sort of moved crossed over from Europe and you're spending so much time in Asia now. I'm going to flip the question around and ask you. So what's the perspective? How do people think of Asia back in Europe?
Unfortunately, I think they have a fear because Asia is the continent which has taken labor from our countries. I mean, common workers in Italy, in the USA. I'm reading a novel by Dave Eggers, and he's writing about that. There is no more industry. There are no more plants in the USA, and plants building things for American people are in China, in India, and there is a fear because of that. There is also a sense of an opportunity. Because some of us, many of us, recognize that this is a new world coming up, is someone new to relate with in terms of business or in cultural terms, and it's a fascinating opportunity. To me, I consider it a fascinating opportunity. I must thank you. You Asians to be building your cities so high and to show me something new. Europe is a little bit has slowed down. There is really possibly fear in the sense after this big economical crisis. We do not know if we are out at last of it will be lasting longer. And what I used to say, Asia is an opportunity. I see from sales of novels and literature from Asia, there is a slow increase. There is definitely an increase. People are are looking at Asia.
Yeah. So, and that's actually a very good point for me to kind of ask. What actually motivated you? What drove you to set up a publishing house that's focused exclusively, on Asia?
Well, everybody in Italy tells me you are so brave in starting a publishing house. I started a publishing house in 2008. Publication started in 2009. Publishing houses in Italy and in Europe are really affording with big difficulties. The situation is not good. What did move? Well, I should say by coincidence. And coincidence is not a bad thing. I mean, I was in India because of, as you told the audience, I have a microfinance company working with microcredit. I was making a research about a microcredit project, and I realized that there were in Bombay, in India, voices that Europe, USA has never known about. And they were clearly good writers. And so I went back to Italy and I made the proposal to some people who joined me in this adventure. And I think I was right, because I don't think the international publishing industry is still able to interact with all literary scenes in Asia. There are some names who grow up and you know about them. There are others who are completely left away, and it's good to be here, to spend time here, to understand, to deeply understand what are the most important voices here under an Asian point of view. I want to give my readers an Asian point of view.
I had a thought at the tip of my head, but as I was explaining to some of my friends earlier, I was in the office until like 2:30 last night. I didn't get to sleep until 3:30. So, kind of these little kind of blackouts are happening. I had a question kind of following on from that, and maybe if I speak this slowly, it will occur to me again what it was. I just want to put on the record actually that the publishing house that Andre has set up and is now successfully running is called Metropolitasia. So even the fact that it's an Asian centric publishing house that's embedded in the name itself, and to my eternal regret, Andre doesn't publish poetry.
So right. So right, I'm a narrative non-fiction writer, because all my 4 books are basically narrative non-fiction. One of them has some short stories in, but basically narrative non-fiction. I think that narrative non-fiction is very interesting. I don't think that the novel itself is the future for literature in the world. I'm not sure of. I think there is some change which is going on.
That's quite a bold comment. I'm going to press you on that. Why do you say that?
Sorry?
Why do you say that? That's quite a bold comment.
I have a sensation that in this world where so many things have been told, and we are told so many different things. We have so many images coming to us. It's now difficult just to tell a story as a novel. For instance, to write a novel as an omniscient voice. I think I am more interested in a book when I understand that the author, the writer, is in the book and I recognize him. Well, I should mention, if you maybe know the last book from Carrère, who is a French writer, who has written a book about Lemonov, who is a Russian writer. And in the book, he tells the true story of Lemonov, which is a fascinating story. And he explained why he has a wish to tell the story about Limonov. And, well, I think this is the right direction. You know, I know every writer, when he's writing a novel, takes his material from his real life, people who met persons, situations, memories. So why to hide them behind the novel form? And the novel in this form was invented in Europe 200 years ago. And more than that, you can say that, let's say, plots have been invented 2000 years ago. I mean, from the Greek tragedy, and then by Shakespeare, stories have been told. And I think every novelist, more or less, at the end of the story, goes in one of these plots. It's difficult to find a new one. We are human. We are human 2,000 years ago. And yes, of course, it's important to tell the old things in a new way. They are happening now in the contemporary world. But I have the sensation that something is changing. The two main daily newspapers in Italy draw a list of the 10 best books of the year. And I was surprised because this is something completely new for Italy. 4 or 5 of them were narrative non-fiction. An Italian writer writing about Pasolini, Carrère writing about Limonov, or the autobiography of some person. Agassi, autobiography, maybe you read it, it was a good book. And well, this is my sensation. Poetry, my friend. I will read your poetry. I will read your poetry, but nobody can really make up a living, or I mean, cost of publication of poetry, because unfortunately people do not read so much poetry.
That is absolutely true. Nobody can make money out of it. And no, given that Lisa earlier just outed me as someone who actually makes money in my day job. I work building mathematical models in a bank. I'm actually going to circle around to Andrea again on this point, because we've talked about Andrea the writer, we've talked about Andrea the publisher, I think it's not going to be fair if we let him go without talking a little bit about Andrea the financier, because he's actually head of an Italian microfinance house. They extend loans to deserving counterparties in Asia and Latin America. And I think a lot of the motivation behind that is kind of a sense of ethical finance, using the capital that's available to him to do good, to enable dignity in the emerging world. And in a way that's kind of, for me, I think, where maybe a socialist conscience actually can be effective, when you sort of acknowledge that there are tools out of capitalism that you can use to your end. So maybe, Andrea, I'd like to kind of ask you to talk a little bit about microfinance, why you do it, and what you think it achieves.
Well, my family has been exploiting workers for about 100 years. And of course, small plants, small companies, and so on. And the last company of ours was eaten up by a big giant, a big multinational, and we defended it up to the end. We even defended the workers, and we have been able to have them continue having their jobs and so on, but each of us has a small slice from that sale. I consider them capital, not just money to spend. Well, I like to buy wine, but when you have in your hand an amount of money, a bigger amount of money, you consider it capital. And I think the duty of capital is to be utilized to create jobs. At that time, it was almost 20 years ago, I was thinking that what I did not like is to see a continuous flow of capital, of money, from southern world countries to north, to Europe, to USA. And microcredits was an option to reverse the flow. Just imagine a coffee grower in Peruvian Sierra. When he has some money and he can save, he go to the bank and deposit in the bank. When the second year he has no money, no more money, and he needs to get a loan, he goes to the bank and the bank says no. Money are coming from him, from his labor, to the big financial center of the world. And microcredit is a way to reverse this, because we can utilize from Europe, we are utilized from Europe, from USA, some capital to give loans to microcredit institutions, to microfinance companies in southern world, and they utilize this to give small loans to micro-entrepreneurs. I remember I was in a big meeting in 1997 where it was used to say that there were 6 million people around the world utilizing microcredit. Now in 2013, and we are up to 130 millions. It means microcredit works. It is just a methodology, financial methodology, how to give poor micro-entrepreneur loans and to be sure to get back and so on. And there are quite a number of methodologies. It's technical, but it works, and that is why it was so much expanded. I'm happy. Next year it will be our 15th birthday for my company, and 15 years. We have our capital in. It was 13 years positive balance of sheet, only 2 years bad balance of sheet. It means we still have all our capital ready to continue the cycle of loans. It goes to microfinance institution in the south and to micro-entrepreneur and back to us. It is a success. It is a success.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrea, for that wonderful session. I think it's around about time, so I'm just going to draw this session to a close. And I'd just like to invite the audience to please put our hands together to thank Andrea for being with us.